welcome to the Cyber Literacy Training Module 1. The broader intent behind building this training module is essentially for it to be a part of the course that we have built, which is the certification course, and to further sensitize you to the potential cyber risks involved when you browse the internet or any of your other devices, and also emphasizing on what are some of the guidelines and safe practices that you can follow to protect yourself against those kind of cyber crimes and cyber risks. Uh, so that's essentially what we're going to be covering across two modules. In this module specifically, which is module 1, we'll be talking about the basic guidelines that you need to follow for the security of different electronic devices, laptop security, smartphone security, and so on, against attacks like phishing attacks, smishing, wishing, while also explaining what those attacks are, even ransomware attacks, and so on. While also indicating what other guidelines you need to follow when you're browsing online. So essentially, all of that information will be covered in Module 1. This information should essentially safeguard you as a consumer and as a user of the internet against the majority of the risks that are out there and majority of the vulnerabilities. Obviously, not safeguarded against 100% of them, but then again, a lot of the cybersecurity can be established by us just by being more aware of the kind of risks that are involved and what possible cyber crimes can occur. Similar to how it is for personal hygiene, by following certain practices, certain hygienic practices for cyber, we can ensure that maximum attacks from germs and viruses can be averted. Similarly, in this case, maintaining a certain amount of cyber hygiene and following certain guidelines and rules. Through this, we can ensure that we protect ourselves against a lot of attacks that are out there. Right, we'll start off with building the context in terms of why we need a training like this on cyber literacy and cyber crime more. Uh, Essentially, a training in cyber literacy in the current climate of 2023, but also beyond. So this can be perfectly explained by if you see news articles every now and then. Especially recently, there was an article in Delhi where the number of complaints relating to cyber issues and cyber crimes have risen by almost 200% in the year 2023 alone. Furthermore, there are many articles that explain how from January to March there's been an 18% week on week surge of cybercrimes and cyber related issues, which is basically a huge increase, right? And then concern shown by the Indian ministries, people from various other sectors, as well as political leaders of our country. And all of them have essentially emphasized on how these cyber crimes need to be nipped in the bud before they become an even bigger problem and become too big for us to solve. One of the major reasons for these issues to become so advanced and at such a large scale is that if you see the latest data, the number of internet users in India is essentially more than 750 million people right now. So a little more than half our population. 75 crore people are on the internet, and by in another year and a half, around 2025, the statistics show that it is likely to grow to about 90 crore or 900 million people. Another key aspect of this statistic is that the Indian population that has connected itself to the internet and has joined this global network comes from all walks of life. Many of them are elderly people who've had no or very little exposure to digital technologies during a majority of their lifetime. Furthermore, even homemakers and small business owners who used to previously operate in an entirely offline space have now been brought into the digital arena. Um, Another key component of this is that there are also students like high school kids, college kids, and who have just gotten access to phones and smartphones and social media and other electronic devices. Furthermore, even after the impact of the pandemic and COVID, with online classes coming in so strongly into the way our society works, even smaller kids who previously did not have access to these electronic devices have now gotten access to the mobile phone or iPads or tablets or any other such devices. Um, so while it is great that we have brought about a lot of people and connected them onto the internet and use this power of the digital world to bring about a lot of people together, but we also need to understand certain drawbacks and certain possible harms that can be caused due to this. So we need to essentially understand how this concept is a double-edged sword with two sides to the coin, and what are the vulnerabilities and what are the risks that are involved when we browse the internet. Uh, so there are obviously malicious actors and hackers out there who would steal your information, your money, your identity, your memories, uh, and that is essentially why we need this form of awareness, this form of cyber awareness and cyber literacy. And as a result, this certification program will provide you with a layer of this greater awareness, deeper awareness of what kind of crimes can happen, what's essentially out there, and how you can safeguard your devices against it, right? Um, so we can start off with the basic guidelines for laptop security. Now, here are some. Essentially, you do not want to on your laptop. You do not want to download any unauthorized software from any of the malicious sites or unknown sites, or something that your antivirus doesn't allow. Something that you need to be. This is something you need to be very careful about. And at the same time, whenever you're accessing an unprotected Wi-Fi network with your laptop, you need to be extremely careful and vigilant even during that Wi-Fi connection. Try to avoid this form of connection as much as possible. Instead, use mobile hotspots if you have to for your laptop, but avoid public and unprotected Wi-Fi networks, because nothing is free, right? So while you may think you were getting Wi-Fi connection, it is likely that hackers and actors out there are logging into your laptop systems and trying to steal data. Um, so another key component is that locking your system is extremely critical. Whenever you leave your system unlocked, this is considered um, an extremely crucial um, locking your system is an extremely crucial safeguard. So locking your system, along with the last point that is seen, beware of shoulder surfing. Now, these may seem like very simple practices that anybody would follow, but you would be surprised when you look at the numbers, how many passwords, how much critical information gets stolen by just people not being careful about these two things. Not locking their system when they leave their system, ensuring that nobody is watching from over your shoulder when you're typing in critical information like passwords and so on, and essentially nobody's shoulder surfing. So while these steps are simple, you need to ensure that you follow these steps religiously and ensure that it does not become a point of vulnerability. Another key step that can be taken towards this form of cyber awareness and cybersecurity um, is essentially safeguarding your laptop while traveling, protecting it from physical damage, and ensuring that it's not left unattended in public areas. Ensures that all form of security, all the data that resides in your laptop is protected, and there is no real issue with this, especially when traveling. Also ensuring that safe against physical damage. It also translates to safety against theft or stealing. Uh, if these steps are not taken, it makes your using of the laptop much more vulnerable, and makes you much more vulnerable for any malicious hacker to use the data that resides in your laptop. And essentially safeguarding your laptop in this form is extremely crucial. Now, when it comes to password security, password. Now, when it comes to password security, we need to ensure that the password is strong. There's no need to stick to simpler passwords like birthdays, date of birth, name of your loved ones, and so on. Much rather, it's important to ensure that the password is a little more unique, because these common factors are essentially essentially form the most commonly hacked passwords for these kind of cyber attacks. And while, especially in the current climate, it is hard, considering there are so many applications and so many systems that you need to log into and create passwords for. So having so many different passwords can be difficult to remember, but with the kind of technological progress that has occurred, there are various solutions out there. Uh, but it's much rather important that you do not compromise on the safety of the password, on the strength of the password, uh, because essentially of this complexity, it's become very easy to hack into accounts, into systems through these commonly used passwords. Another key factor is that as a user, you should ensure that you change your password at regular intervals and under no circumstances share it with anyone. This is extremely important that no matter what, you need to avoid sharing your passwords with anyone, whoever that is. And even if you have to, under extreme circumstances, then it is necessary to change your password right after that. Uh, that's a practice that every user who uses an electronic device needs to follow. It is also important to log off your system, uh, which is essentially very similar to locking your system whenever you're not accessing it, and avoid using the same password for each account. Try to make it as difficult for any hacker to hack into your laptop system. Whenever you do use certain specific common passwords, it becomes much easier. In the current climate and with the kind of progress that has occurred, there are a lot of password management apps out there which can be used and help you work around the problem of too many applications and too many passwords to remember. And once again, protecting yourself from shoulder surfing while entering these passwords and other critical information is extremely important, as we spoke about this earlier as well. Now, coming to another form of cyber attacks, which is phishing attacks. Now, what are phishing attacks? These are essentially uh, any attack tool which is used to retrieve information from you. In the past couple of years, in the last decade or so, it has been predominantly done through emails. Uh, when the public information, uh, when the public phone number data wasn't as public as before in the last decade or so, when smartphones or social media was not as public and as easily accessible. It used to be done, these kind of phishing attacks used to be done predominantly through emails. But in recent years, the scope of these attacks has significantly widened. And so phishing involves this larger practice as well, where your information can get stolen. And in most cases, it is done so by you voluntarily sharing your critical data. Um, there are also different forms of phishing. There is SMS phishing called smishing. There is voice phishing called wishing, which is essentially done through the kind of voice calls that we receive nowadays. And there are also a bunch of other forms of phishing. Now, we will be covering a couple of these different forms in module one, but this is something that you can safeguard yourself against by ensuring that you think before you click on anything. You do not need to click on links which come from random emails and unknown senders, and do not open any untrusted email attachments or respond to any of the emails where the sources are unknown. Now, all of these steps do sound like a no-brainer, and the most simple step you can do to ensure that you are secure from a cyber point of view. But you would be surprised by how many people fall for this in terms of giving out their sensitive information like usernames, passwords, debit card information, credit card details over mail. Either people are driven by greed or some form of or the fear of loss, and then they tend to believe that the sender is a legitimate source that is asking for the information, and they'll think no harm will come about when they share this information, but they're always surprised later. So ensure that you verify the sender's identity. One of the ways to identify a phishing email is checking for any typos or grammatical errors, uh, which can even occur in the sender's ID. There could be a lowercase uppercase mismatch, or there could be a spelling mistake, or any other such factor. So even if they're pretending to be an authentic source, there could be a small clue that could let you in to tell you that it is not an authentic source and it is likely a phishing SMS or a phishing email. Uh, so if any of these factors are met and if any of these red flags are present, you need to ensure that you do not touch that email or you do not respond to that message or do not open the link. It's not meant for you. It can only cause harm. So it's important for you to delete it. Uh, Now, coming to the solutions for this, there are multiple ways to enforce multi-factor authentication for various apps now, at least for the more critical and important ones like financial apps, brokering apps, as well as other critical apps. So using two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, keeping that kind of a system in place is extremely important. So essentially, at least for the critical sources, ensuring this form of authentication is enforced for your official apps, as most of the people now use their electronic devices for official or professional use. It is also important to ensure that these factors are in place and ensure that you do not post your official email address or your mobile number publicly on any social media under any possible circumstance. It's essentially can be compared to giving out your home address to anyone that's out there and that person just walking in and taking away whatever they want, right? So you want to avoid that scenario in any possible condition. Uh, Coming to another form of phishing attacks, these attacks are known as phishing attacks since they're usually done through voice tools. We briefly spoke about this in the last slide as well, and they essentially refer to phishing done through voice. A very common example is the kind of scam calls and the voice calls that we get these days. These are also known as junk calls or spam calls. So ensure that you do, in any case, you do verify the caller's identity. Uh, this can be done through a lot of apps that are out there. One common example is Truecaller, and there are various other apps as well, which can tell you the identity of the caller, whether it's a junk call or a spam call, and how many other people have reported the same caller as a junk caller. So it is extremely important that in this kind of a situation, you do not respond to any of these calls. By all means, even if you have to, even if you do have to speak, it is extremely important that you do not share any personal information and just completely ensure that you do not leak out any critical information through these kind of calls. Uh, one thing that you can do to help One thing you can do is also to help others ensure that they never get such kind of junk or spam calls is to block the caller or report it to be a suspicious caller. Most of the apps now provide some Most of the apps, especially within operating systems like Android, they provide the service now where you can block and report the caller. So using these kind of tools will essentially reduce that there's at least essentially ensure that there's at least one less malicious actor from acting and affecting users and their critical data. Another key factor is that it is important to hang up immediately if the caller sounds suspicious. Uh, a common device that can be used for this is that most of these fake guys and hackers pretend to be calling from a lottery company, or they want your KYC, or they're pretending to be some close relative who needs financial assistance. And in all of these situations, they can be a red flag, and do not share your critical information whenever such a caller happens. And for any given call, which can seem a little suspicious, verify the caller's identity at least 10 times. That after a point, once you know who is on the other side of the call, then you can take the necessary action as required. If there's any form of doubt or any form of suspicion over the identity of the caller, do not share any critical information. Uh, it's extremely unplausible the amount of loss that a consumer can have by a simple leakage of information, even the smallest detail. The person, through this form of information, the person can create an inroad into your system and steal a lot of information which you never thought was so critical. Um, Coming to another form of phishing, which is done through SMS, this is called smishing attacks. They are essentially attacks that are done through SMS or and have now evolved to be done through various chat platforms like Telegram, for example. Um, Recently itself, there are stories which have emerged, which tell you about how people pretend to be a friend or a boss or a wife or husband reaching out to someone on Telegram or any other SMS tool asking for some kind of financial assistance or some form of help, and ask you to transfer a certain amount of money in XYZ account immediately, or to do this with your UPI. And then most people do fall for it. And taking off right from here, another common attack, another common form of cyber attack that is out there is done through a UPI received request that comes to you. If you don't pay careful attention and you just click on the UPI and enter your UPI PIN, uh, and in such cases, it's very common for the and in such cases, it's very common that money gets deducted directly from your account, and it gives very easy access into your bank account for someone completely unknown. Um, So these are essentially some of the ways in which these cyber and machine attacks have become extremely sophisticated. So do not click on any of the links that appear in a message from an unknown sender. Figure out multiple avenues to verify a sender's identity. Um, and that is extremely important. Even if you're getting a phone call, you're getting an email, you're getting an SMS, or even a text on WhatsApp, or a Telegram alert, or any other form of social media, figure out 2 to 3 ways in which you can verify the sender's identity. And you can use all of these mediums by calling the person, by sending them a text again, in some cases emailing them. But then, unless you have not identified the person who you're talking to and are 100% sure that you know who the sender is or who is the person on the other side, it is extremely critical to not share any information with them. Once again, re-emphasizing on this, common forms of information that unknown sender can ask you for is your, by portraying that they are from a lottery company, asking you for your KYC, or an OTP, financial frauds. These are some of the most common frauds that can happen through these kind of SMS attacks and other forms of cyber attacks. This is also extremely important because a lot of these attacks don't even get reported in the media or to the cyber cell. But then again, this is one of the most common forms of cyber attacks which are out there, and you need to safeguard yourself against these forms of attacks. And again, you can block and report suspicious or spam numbers to ensure that they do not bother you again, but also ensure the cyber safety of others as well. Again, moving on to another device, if you were to talk about an electronic device that's commonly used by a lot of people, how can you protect your smartphone from these kind of cyber attacks? So the most effective way is that you regularly back up your data, like how we do with our laptops and essentially for our smartphones too. It is extremely critical that we regularly back up the phone data to ensure that the memory, including information like chats, notes, etc., is everything that resides on your device gets regularly backed up. Uh, Once again, having a protective system or a malware system in place, having a strong password, is how we had spoken about having a strong password before for other laptop systems and other electronic devices as well. These are similar guidelines that you can follow for your smartphone, and in some cases, critical apps can be logged into with a stronger password to ensure that people cannot penetrate through these systems. Another key factor while using smartphones is that you ensure that you do not download any suspicious file. Especially for Android users, there are a lot of .apk applications out there. So you need to ensure that you do not download or install these apps. Because these kind of applications usually are not allowed to sit on the official app stores or the Play Store, as there is for different for Android and Apple users. So it may not be a good idea to install these apps on your phone because they could be extremely dangerous and malicious. These these applications may appear to be games or any other kind of platform, but they are likely to cause severe harm to your electronic device and in turn to you. So it is very important to be extremely careful and ensure that you do not download and install any of these unknown apps which are not on the official App Store or the Play Store, whether you're an Android or an Apple user. Another key factor is that it is extremely important to turn off your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth when they are not in use. This is a rather good cyber hygiene practice because they can become gateways and inroads into your systems, especially for very sophisticated hackers who can enter your phone using your Bluetooth or Wi-Fi when it is connected. So it's important to ensure that these two components of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are turned off, especially when you're in a public place and when you're not using them. And another key factor for this is that you keep updating your operating system for your mobile phones that usually come on these devices very regularly. If you ensure that your smartphone, the software for your smartphone is up to date, this is also a very good practice. So that ensures that the electronic device consists of the latest security patches, and all of these are downloaded, and the latest forms of vulnerabilities are also made known to the system. So that's also a very good cyber hygiene practice that you should follow. Uh, Moving on to another specific nature of an attack, these forms of cyber attacks are called ransomware. Um, Giving an example, I think a couple of years ago itself, there was a very famous incident where multiple computers across the world got locked and with some form of ransomware, and people had to pay the ransom to be logged into their accounts, which I think was in the form of Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency, to get back into their systems and unlock these systems. Otherwise, they would be rendered useless. Since then, these form of ransomware issues have become a very prominent issue uh, among cyber literacy courses and just bringing out general awareness for the public. There are various ransomware attacks that have been formed. There are various anti-ransomware softwares that have been formed, and a lot of companies as well, cyber companies, work towards reducing these forms of attacks, usually within countries, across cities, within companies or various organizations. These kind of organizations have been formed for the masses, and considering that it has recently evolved as a very powerful form of attack, wherein your device is locked from your own use unless you pay a certain amount of ransom. So it is extremely important that you make yourself aware of these kind of attacks as well, and ensure that you do not click on any unverified link. You practice a very safe clicking method and do not open any untrusted email attachment, and only download from official sites as well. Uh, it is also important that you do not use any unfamiliar USBs. That's extremely important issue. This used to be the most common form of virus transfers for around 5 to 10 years ago, when almost all users used pen drives and hard drives. So this used to be one of the most common ways of malware transfer. So it is extremely important to not use unfamiliar USBs and pen drives, and only using your own is extremely crucial. It is also important that you ensure to update your antivirus software to fight off any ransomware attacks. Uh, that also does a lot in terms of protecting you against the ransomware, and then backing up your data is another key factor that's important, because in the worst case scenario, if your data gets lost, there is always a backup that you can access, and under no circumstance do you need to pay the ransom to the hacker or the malicious actor. Uh, Even now that if the virus in the worst case even now if the virus in the worst case scenario, or there is a bug that is inside your system and you can't access it, then it's extremely important to get help from designated authorities, rather than trying to deal with the issue yourself by paying the ransom. Uh, and it's also very common, but that even after paying the ransom, it will not guarantee the return of your data. So you need to be very, very careful about these kind of attacks that are out there as well. Uh, and lastly, we can also talk about a use case for these kind of cyber attacks through the lens of online shopping, which has become one of the most common use cases out there, especially because since a lot of people have joined the internet in the last couple of years, people who have joined recently, or even for people who've been using the internet for a while now, a lot of them use the internet to for online shopping, whether you're buying clothes, electronics, accessories, food items. Much of the shopping now is moving gradually online, uh, even to commodities and different forms of into commodities and different forms of applications like cars uh, and houses also to a certain extent. So as more and more of that happens, we need to be extremely careful of the risks involved in these kind of processes. Uh, so there are many fake websites out there who claim to be selling this kind of stuff extremely cheaply. So you need to be very careful against these kind of websites as well, because it's important to remember that there's essentially nothing that's free. And while you may think you are getting cheap items in return, it's very likely for some form of ransomware or bug to be installed in your system, and which will lead to you losing your data. And for all you know, you may even such attackers may also take up your money, and might not give away anything in return. Uh, there are several websites also that tend to be the cause of such attacks. So it's extremely important that for you as a user, you check the security of the URL, ensure that it is an HTTPS website and it is not fake. Under no circumstances should you save your payment details in the web browser. Especially these days, it's very common, and for many browsers, they prompt you, like many browsers like Google Chrome and Safari, they prompt you to enter this information. Uh, and while it may seem rather logical to do so because you have to enter your payment details again and again in so many different places, it's likely that you will want to save your data into your browser so you can use it again later. But it's necessary to ensure that you do not do that. Regardless, take the pain of putting your details, financial details especially, over and over again, because this will at least ensure that suddenly, if there is a ransomware attack or any other bug that is installed in your system, you will not get a message that X amount of money has been deducted from your credit card and X amount of money has been taken away from your bank account, and such kind of information which can be accessed if you save your passwords and other details on your web browsers. So it's very uh, critical that these kind of credit card details or any other payment details are not saved onto your web browser. All of your money can get lost as a part of as a part of that if there is any attack on your laptop systems. So the risk is extremely real. And in case you are connected to any public network, it is necessary to avoid shopping because you are extremely vulnerable. Changing your password at periodic intervals, once again, it's a very good hygienic cyber secure practice. Uh, Whether you're using your device for official purposes, whether it's for using it to access shopping sites, whether it's gaming sites, whether it's your smartphone, laptop, any other electronic device, anywhere, it's always important to use a strong password and change it often. These are extremely important and crucial cyber hygiene practices. Uh, so essentially, this is broadly what we wanted to cover in module one. There will be more content that will be created across different modules, and at the end, there will be a quiz as well, which you can take to get your certificate and make yourself more cyber aware and more literate from a cyber point of view, if you will. And this is something that you can share with all your family, all your friends, to ensure that this information does go out there and people can safeguard themselves against the malicious hackers and actors that are out there to get you and try to steal your information. So once again, thank you.